My aunt stole everything from me. Now she's in prison, and her fortune is funding the people she betrayed. I, 27M, have been living with my Aunt Lucy, 52F, for the past 5 years, ever since my mom passed away from cancer. At the time, Lucy seemed like a godsend. She showed up at the funeral, all tears and sympathy, insisting I shouldn't be alone in my grief. "Your mother would want me to take care of you," she said, and like an idiot, I believe the first red flag should have been how quickly she convinced me to move out of my mom's house and into hers. "It'll be too painful to stay there," she insisted. "You need a fresh start." I was 22, devastated and honestly barely functioning, so I agreed. Lucy handled all the paperwork for selling mom's house, claiming she'd invest the money for me since she was good with these things. Looking back, I can't believe how naive I was, but grief does strange things to your mind. The past 5 years have been complicated. Lucy owns several rental properties around the city, and she gradually pulled me into helping manage them. At first, it seemed like she was teaching me the family business. "You're learning valuable skills," she'd say, while having me handle maintenance calls at 3 a.m. or deal with tenant complaints. I was grateful. After all, she'd taken me in right, but something changed last month. I was organizing some old files in her home office, another one of her learning opportunities, when I found a folder with my name on it. Inside were documents I'd never seen before, papers about my mother's estate, property deeds, and what looked like financial statements. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I took photos of everything with my phone before putting them back. That night after Lucy went to bed, I started going through them properly. That's when my stomach dropped. The sale of my mom's house, the money never went into any investment account. Lucy had somehow managed to transfer it directly to herself. There were other properties too, ones I'd never known about, that my mom had apparently owned. All of them had been transferred to Lucy's name in the months following mom's death. I couldn't sleep that night, or the next. I started digging deeper, looking through more files when Lucy was out. Each discovery made me feel sicker. My cousin Addison, 24F, caught me one night, and instead of ratting me out, she hesitated before whispering, "Check the files from 2019, the ones about Grandma's trust." That's when I found it. A letter from my mother's old friend Bella, dated just weeks before Mom died. It detailed exactly what properties and assets were meant to be left to me. The letter mentioned a trust fund that I'd never known existed. Lucy had somehow gained control of everything. Yesterday morning, I finally confronted her. I wish I could say I was calm and collected, but seeing her sitting there at the breakfast table, casually sipping her coffee while reading the paper, something in me snapped. "Wanna tell me about my mom's properties?" I asked, dropping the photos on the table. The change in her face was instant. The mask of caring aunt vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. "You've been going through my private files," she hissed. "Your files, those documents are about my inheritance." What followed was the most surreal hour of my life. Lucy went from threatening to call the police, to claiming she'd done everything for my own good because I was too irresponsible to handle the inheritance, to finally showing her true colors entirely. "You're just like your mother, weak, pathetic, unable to handle the real world," she spat. "I've wasted 5 years trying to make something of you. You're worthless and you'll die alone, just like she did." She gave me 2 hours to pack my things and get out. As I was leaving, she smiled that cold smile and said, "Good luck proving anything. All the properties are in my name now. Legally, you have nothing." What Lucy doesn't know is that before I left, I made copies of everything. More importantly, she doesn't know about the conversation I just had with Bella, who's had 5 years to gather evidence of her own, or about the fact that Cooper, Lucy's ex-husband, has been waiting years to help bring her down. I'm meeting with a lawyer tomorrow morning. Lucy thinks she's left me with nothing, but she has no idea what's coming. Update first, thank you all for the overwhelming support on my last post. The past 2 weeks have been intense, and I've been documenting everything meticulously. Some of you called it in the comments. This goes deeper than I initially thought. After my first meeting with the legal team, thank you Adam, for the referral, I realized we needed more than just the documents I'd photographed. We needed to establish a pattern of behavior, and that meant diving into Lucy's past. That's where Bella came in. I met Bella at a small coffee shop downtown. She was exactly as I remembered her from my childhood. Sharp eyes, no-nonsense attitude, and that same silver pendant my mom had given her for her 40th birthday. The moment she sat down, she pulled out a thick manila envelope. "I've been waiting for this day," she said, sliding it across the table. "Your mother knew Lucy would try something. She just didn't know how far Lucy would go." Inside the envelope was a series of letters spanning back 15 years. They detailed Lucy's slow infiltration into my mother's life after my father passed. The thing is, Lucy isn't even really my aunt. She was my mom's stepsister from a brief marriage, but she'd always insisted on the aunt title. It gave her an air of legitimacy she didn't deserve. Your mother started getting suspicious about 3 years before she got sick, Bella explained, stirring her coffee. Lucy had been pushing her to combine their real estate ventures, claiming it would be more efficient. Your mom refused. That's when the manipulation started. The letters revealed a disturbing pattern. Lucy would create small crises, then swoop in to help. She'd sabotage my mom's business dealings, then offer solutions that gave her more control. It was subtle, calculated, and apparently I wasn't her first target. Addison reached out to me privately last week. We met in a park. She was paranoid about Lucy tracking her phone. Turns out, Lucy had pulled similar stunts with other family members, including her own daughter. Addison showed me documents about her college fund that had mysteriously disappeared into Lucy's accounts. She always has a way of making you feel like you're crazy for questioning her, Addison said, hugging herself against the cold. Like you're ungrateful or stupid for not seeing how everything she does is for your own good. The real breakthrough came when Adam managed to track down Cooper, Lucy's ex-husband. He agreed to meet us at his office after hours, and what he shared made my blood run cold. Lucy's been running this same scheme for decades, Cooper explained, pulling up old files on his computer. She finds vulnerable people with assets, integrates herself into their lives, then gradually takes control of everything. I tried to stop her when we were married, but she's incredibly careful about covering her tracks. Cooper had kept detailed records of everything: dates, transactions, altered documents. He showed us how Lucy had manipulated signatures, backdated paperwork, and exploited legal loopholes. The similar patterns in my case were undeniable, but here's where it gets interesting. Lucy made one crucial mistake with my mother's estate. She was so focused on getting control of the properties that she overlooked something in the original trust documentation. My grandfather, Mom's dad, had included a specific clause about property transfers. Any attempt to circumvent the intended inheritance would trigger an automatic review process. The legal team is building a solid case, but we need to move carefully. Lucy's gotten away with this for so long because she knows how to play the system. She's already trying to gaslight me through flying monkeys. Distant relatives are suddenly calling, telling me how worried they are about my mental state and how I'm turning against family. Yesterday, I received a text from Lucy. I raised you better than this. You're making a mistake that will haunt you for the rest of your life. I'm the only real family you have left. I didn't respond, but I saved the message. Every contact attempt gets documented now. The most surreal part, while going through old photos for evidence, I found one from my college graduation. Lucy is standing next to me, beaming like a proud aunt, her arm around my shoulders. In her other hand, partially hidden, she's holding what I now know were the papers transferring my mother's primary property into her name. The photo was taken just hours after she'd filed them. Addison is helping us build a timeline of Lucy's other victims. She's been quietly reaching out to family members who'd been ostracized over the years. All of them have similar stories. We're finding patterns in bank transfers, property records, and mysterious document changes that all point to Lucy. The legal team says we're about 3 weeks away from making our first official move. Lucy thinks she's untouchable because she's been getting away with this for so long. She has no idea that her own careful record-keeping will be her downfall. Every transaction, every document she forged, every property she stole, she kept proof of all of it, thinking no one would ever connect the dots. Next week, we're meeting with someone from the state's Financial Crimes Unit. Turns out, property fraud across multiple counties gets people's attention. Update 2, something changed this morning. I was reviewing property records with Adam when Lucy showed up at his house unannounced. She stood there on his doorstep, perfectly coiffed as always, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. The smile on her face sent chills down my spine. It was the same one she wore when telling me I had 2 hours to leave her house. "Ian, darling, we need to talk," she said, as if the last month hadn't happened. "This little tantrum of yours has gone far enough." I didn't let her in. We spoke through Adam's security camera system instead. Her mask slipped quickly when she realized she wouldn't get face-to-face manipulation opportunities she wanted. "You have no idea what you're doing," she hissed, all pretense of kindness gone. "I've already spoken to my contacts at the county office. Good luck trying to prove anything without access to those records." That's when I knew we had her. Lucy wouldn't have come in person unless she was scared. The fact that she was trying to block access to county records meant our investigation was hitting too close to home. What Lucy doesn't know is that we already have copies of everything. Cooper's meticulous record-keeping wasn't just about their marriage, he'd been documenting her schemes for years. The day after she kicked me out, he started making calls to his old contacts in various county offices. By the time Lucy tried to restrict access, we had complete files on every property transaction she'd made in the last decade. The pieces started falling into place fast after that. Bella connected us with 3 other families Lucy had targeted over the years. Their stories were eerily similar to mine. Lucy would appear during a crisis, offer help with paperwork and financial management, then gradually take control of everything. She always made sure to isolate her victims from other family members first. Addison has been incredible through all of this. Last week, she found a hidden safe in Lucy's home office while her mother was at a charity event. Inside were documents Lucy thought she'd destroyed, including the original versions of papers she'd later altered. Addison photographed everything before putting it back exactly as she found it. She always told me I was too stupid to understand business, Addison said during our last meeting. Turns out I understand it well enough to know when someone's committing fraud. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Remember those worried relatives Lucy sent to check on my mental state? One of them, my mother's cousin, had been harboring guilt for years. He knew something was wrong when my mom died but had been too afraid of Lucy to speak up. Now he's provided a sworn statement about conversations he overheard between Lucy and her associates. Lucy's been busy too. She's trying to liquidate properties faster than usual. 3 buildings have been listed for sale in the past week. She's dropping prices just enough to attract quick buyers but not so much to raise suspicion. Classic signs of someone preparing to run. What she doesn't realize is that every attempted sale creates new documentation. Each transaction leaves another trail. Our legal team says she's basically building our case for us. Yesterday, I received a package from my mother's old storage unit, the one Lucy claimed had been emptied years ago. Bella had kept the key all this time, waiting for the right moment. Inside was a letter from my mom, dated just weeks before she died. She knew what Lucy was planning but was too sick to fight it. The letter included account numbers, passwords, and a detailed list of all the properties that should have been mine. The most damning part, security footage from the bank showing Lucy accessing my mother's safe deposit box the day after she died, hours before the will was supposedly read. The bank manager remembered it because Lucy had insisted there was an emergency, requiring immediate access. She walked out with a stack of documents we now know were the original property deeds. Cooper warned us this morning that Lucy's been making calls to contacts in South America. She has connections there from her real estate ventures, including a few properties she thinks we don't know about. She's planning something big, but here's what made today different. We finally got access to the trust fund records my grandfather set up. Lucy thought she'd covered her tracks by creating a complex web of transfers and shell companies. She didn't count on my grandfather's old partner still being alive and still having copies of the original trust documents. The numbers are staggering. The properties we knew about, they're just the tip of the iceberg. Lucy's been running this scheme across 3 states, using each victim's assets to fund the next acquisition. She built an empire on stolen inheritances and forged documents. Tomorrow morning, we're meeting with a joint task force of state and federal authorities. Lucy's schemes cross state lines, which changes everything. While she's been busy trying to block county records and intimidate relatives, she's missed the bigger picture forming around her. Addison just texted me, Lucy's booking flight tickets. She's planning to leave the country next week, probably thinking she can wait this out somewhere else. She has no idea that her passport has already been flagged. Final update. I'm writing this from what used to be Lucy's office, the very place where she plotted her schemes. The view she once bragged about is now mine, along with everything else she built on lies. 3 weeks ago, Lucy's grand escape to South America ended the moment federal agents stopped her at the airport. Turns out, a flagged passport ruins travel plans. Her perfect mask of superiority shattered right then and there. But let's rewind to how we made it happen. The property records Cooper helped us gather exposed Lucy's real game. She wasn't just stealing from family. She was running a massive real estate fraud scheme, leveraging stolen properties for loans, flipping them for profit, and leaving a trail of forged documents and shattered lives. When she walked into her final deal expecting a payday, she found a room full of federal agents instead. She tried to play it off, this is all a misunderstanding, but the evidence was airtight. Addison was there when they took her away. Lucy's last desperate plea, everything I did was for you. Addison's response was brutal, the only legacy you built was a prison sentence, Mom. As more victims came forward, the scope of her fraud skyrocketed into 8 figures. But karma had a final twist. Grandpa's trust had a reversal clause. Every stolen property, every fraudulent deal, all of it legally reverted to the rightful heirs. Which means Lucy's empire, the one she spent decades building, now belongs to me. The ultimate irony, The house she kicked me out of is now Addison's with one condition. Lucy can stay, but only as a tenant paying rent to her own daughter. And that rent, it funds a foundation for victims of inheritance fraud. Lucy's money is now protecting the very people she once preyed on. She wrote me from prison begging for forgiveness. I didn't reply. Instead, I read the letter at my mother's grave, then burned it. Her stolen assets are being returned, her offshore accounts drained for restitution, and her reputation gone, destroyed by her own greed. Meanwhile, Addison is thriving, studying business law to help families like ours. Cooper published his book on financial fraud using Lucy's case as a prime example. And me? I'm using my inheritance the way my mother intended, building homes, funding scholarships, and helping families secure real generational wealth. Lucy always said I was worthless and would die alone. She was wrong about both. Stripping away toxic people doesn't leave you alone, it reveals who your real family is. And that's the best revenge of all.